විහිදෙන ජීවිතේ.
Very good evening. You're watching News First Primetime News, where the people come first. I'm Michaela Fernando, joined by sign language interpreter Brian De Cruz. Before we head into more news in detail, here are a look at your headlines.
Protesters still standing at Galle despite heavy rains. Protests calling for the resignation of the president continue here at home and across the globe. Another death reported from a fuel queue. Sri Lanka is the only country in the world with a constitution that encourages politicians to steal. A statement from the former Auditor General. Opposition leader meets former President Sri Lanka. Imran Khan sent home after losing a vote of no confidence.
In your top story, Pakistan's National Assembly will meet tomorrow to elect its new Prime Minister. Imran Khan was ousted from the position after a no-confidence vote at midnight. Opposition leader Shehbaz Sharif and Shah Mohammad Qureshi have been nominated to fill the vacancy.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan was ousted from power after losing a no-confidence vote in the National Assembly. The vote was held shortly after midnight after the Supreme Court upheld a motion brought by the opposition parties against him. The motion was passed with 174 votes in the 342-member House. Imran Khan is the first Pakistani Prime Minister to be removed by a no-confidence vote. He has said he would not recognize an opposition government and that there was a US-led conspiracy to remove him. Pakistan's National Assembly will elect a new leader for the country tomorrow. The new Prime Minister will be able to hold power until October 2023, when the next election is due to be held. None of the 27 Pakistani Prime Ministers since 1947 have completed a full 5-year term.
A former Pakistani national cricket captain promised to fight corruption and fix the country's economy when he was elected as Prime Minister in 2018. But a little more than 3 years into power, Imran Khan has found himself ousted from his position. The economic and political crisis that persisted under his governance were key for his removal, backed by a no-confidence vote. In 2018, Imran Khan approached the International Monetary Fund for a $6 billion bailout package that year, but failed to meet most of the IMF's requirements. This led to failed talks with the IMF, and as a result, Pakistan had to obtain loans from Saudi Arabia at a much higher interest rate. With COVID-19 taking a toll on Pakistan's economy, the cost of living has been skyrocketing and the Pakistani rupee has depreciated against the US dollar. Imran Khan's failure to work in tandem with his allies and the military led to a breakdown of relations within his coalition government. Today, Imran Khan has become yet another Pakistani Prime Minister who has not completed a full term in office.
Thousands of determined Sri Lankans have been gathering outside the President's office in Colombo, regardless of their differences. News First Nisa Suryachi joins us from the Galle Green, where the protests are currently ongoing.
Right now I'm in front of the President's office and there's a flock of people gathered here tonight protesting against the President and the 225 members of Parliament to resign immediately. What they're asking for is a corruption-free Sri Lanka. As you can see, there's a massive crowd gathered here today, and a crowd has been gathering from all day. There was a crowd here yesterday. There were people who stayed here overnight.
downpours didn't stop determined citizens from holding demonstrations at the Golfies Green overnight.
So we want a person who can build the nation, who will be genuine and who will not rob the country while being on the chair.
You need to make sure that they all play by the rules, so we have to set the rules. That's why we need a 21st Amendment, and we have to make sure we have independent state institutions or we'll never fix this country.
ඉතිහාසයේ ඉඳන් දේශපාලඥයා කරේ ජනතාව ජාති කුල ආගම් විදියට දෙකට කරා.
ඉන්දියාව නෙමෙයි මොකෙන් ආධාර හම්බුණා ඊළඟ මැයි මාසෙනකොට ඒ ඔක්කොම ඉවර වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ මිනිස්සු මොනවද කරන්න කියලා මිනිස්සුවත් දන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකයි මේ මිනිස්සු අද පාට බහැලෙන්නේ නැත්තම් මෙච්චර වැසෙදී මේකට මිනිස්සුන්ට පාරට එන්න කිසිම හේතුවක් නැහැ.
ජනාධිපති ගෝඨාභය ඇතුළු මේ නඩේට ගෙදර යන්න වෙන එක ස්ථිරයි. ඒ දිනේ පිළිබඳ විතරයි අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙන්නේ. අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මේගොල්ලන්ට ගෙදර යන්න වෙනවා.
In a gesture of solidarity, volunteers were seen distributing snacks among the protesters. Large crowds of people have been gathering outside the president's office since last morning to protest against the mounting issues in the country.
A group of young people held a silent protest at the Ambalanthota bus stand this morning. The protesters, representing all ethnicities of Sri Lanka, demanded the president to resign from his position. They had also organized a street drama as part of the demonstration. Crowds of people had organized a protest at the Galle bus stand demanding the president to resign. The took steps to display a banner on the historic golf fort calling for the resignation.
සාපය පන්නන්න මහජනතාව පාරට බහලා තියන්නේ ගෝඨාභය විතරක් නෙවෙයි මේ ආණ්ඩුවත් පන්නන්න ඕන අසාධාරණ මේ සමාජ ක්‍රමයම පන්නලා දාන්න ඕන.
Students of the Trincomalee Technical College added their voice to the protests by marching to the town.
දැන් ඇති මේ පාලනය හොඳටම දැන් අපිට කියන්න තියෙන්නේ ගෝඩාට කියන්න තියෙන්නේ දැන් යන්න ගිහින් මේ රට කරන්න පුළුවන් ජනතාව ඉන්නවා ඉගෙනගත්ත මිනිස්සු ඉන්නවා මේ රටේ ඕන තරම් මේ රටක් පාලනය කරන්න පුළුවන් පිරිසක් මේ රට බාර ගන්න පුළුවන් පිරිසක් ඉන්නවා ඒගොල්ලන්ට රට බාර දෙන්න.
Buddhist monks from the Trincomalee Sasana Rakshana Bala Mandalaya also joined the protest.
ජාති ભેදයක් නැතුව ආගම් ભેදයක් නැතුව සියලු දෙනාම රණවිරෝහ කියලා හිතාගෙන මොවුන් බලවා හැරීම සඳහා කටයුතු කරන්න.
A group of young citizens organized a protest at the Badula town demanding the president to resign.
Protests were held opposite churches against the current government after the Sunday Mass this morning.
A silent protest was organized by the Methodist Church and other denominations today. Members of the clergy attended the protest opposite the Methodist Church in Kalpiti. A demonstration was also organized in Jaila today.
Sri Lankans overseas too continue to add their voices to the protests against the current Sri Lankan government.
Sri Lankans in Atlanta had organized a protest opposite the CNN broadcasting station in the US today.
Go to jail! Go to jail! Go to jail! Go to jail!
இலங்கை நாட்டு மக்களோட பிரச்சனை இதுல தமிழ் சிங்களம் எந்த வேறுபாடும் இல்ல எங்கட ஒற்றுமை தான் அவங்களோட வீழ்ச்சிக்கு முதல் படி சோ ஒற்றுமையா இருப்போம் அவங்கள ஜெயிலுக்கு அனுப்புவோம்.
Protesters converged in the US state of California against the Sri Lankan government. Sri Lankans in Florida also organized a protest in Miami. Actress Sanjeevani Veerasinghe joined a demonstration in Los Angeles. Sri Lankans in Israel also organized a demonstration. In Australia, hundreds of Sri Lankans gathered in Sydney to participate in a demonstration against the crises that has affected Sri Lanka. A protest had also been organised in Brisbane today.
Today, hundreds of Sri Lankans living in Brisbane have gathered here at Brisbane Square to carry out a peaceful protest. They say that though they live here in Australia for work and education, their families back home are suffering due to the total mismanagement of the Sri Lankan government. They are here to stand with the people of Sri Lanka. They need change.
Sri Lankan expatriates had organised a demonstration in the Canadian city of Toronto today. A protest had also been organised in Calgary yesterday. Sri Lankan expatriates in Japan also added their voice to the wave of demonstrations. They participated in a protest in Chiba. Demonstrations had also been organized in Italy's cities of Milano and Viterbo. One protest was also organized in Sicily. Also joining the protests were Sri Lankans in Sweden's central city of Västerås. Frustrated citizens are chanting slogans at demonstrations, demanding to bring back wealth stolen from the state coffers from overseas. This raises questions on how countries can repatriate wealth that are stolen or amassed through corrupt means. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption, signed by 140 countries including Sri Lanka in 2004, outlines two main methods of recovering stolen assets. The two methods are taking legal action in courts or entering into agreements with other countries that hold the stolen wealth. Although the process is time-taking, many countries have adopted these mechanisms to recover stolen wealth. Nigeria had gone to court in Switzerland to recover $320 million stolen by Nigeria's former military leader Sani Abacha. They had also signed agreements with the US and Jersey to recover $300 million looted by the former leader. Similarly, Uzbekistan had entered into an agreement with Switzerland to recover $115 million of stolen assets. The assets were looted by Gulnara Karimova, the daughter of a former Uzbek president. Kazakhstan had signed an agreement with the US and Switzerland to set up a foundation called BOTA to recover stolen assets. At present, countries like Mozambique are passing laws to strengthen the process of recovering illicit assets. Others, like Kenya, are confiscating assets at an increasingly rapid pace by signing agreements with countries that hold the stolen assets. The World Bank says a country needs to strengthen its laws to make asset recovery and international cooperation easier. It adds that setting up specialized agencies for asset recovery and providing them with enough resources is also vital. Another crucial aspect would be to provide sufficient training for lawyers and judges to handle matters relating to asset recovery. Does Sri Lanka have adequate laws and facilities to repatriate the stolen wealth?
When it comes to international asset recovery, we do not have a comprehensive law on proceeds of crime. In the absence of a comprehensive legal mechanism, we are still asking support from the respective countries and those institutions to help us to at least repatriate some of these assets. At a diplomatic level, you have to connect with that country, and our relevant agencies need to connect with those of that country. This proposed law on proceeds of crime needs to be brought into the country soon.
For several decades, governments have come to power in Sri Lanka, repeatedly promising to end corruption. Details of hidden wealth and assets that were exposed through the Panama and Pandora papers continue to make the rounds even at present. However, would it be enough to limit these matters to just slogans during election campaigns? The need of the hour is to formulate the relevant laws to repatriate the wealth and assets amassed illegally. That is the expectation of the people.
Former Auditor General Gamini Vijayasinghe says the constitution which allows those in power to engage in corruption must be amended.
Sri Lanka is the only country with a constitution that forces rulers to engage in corruption. The constitution pressurizes those in power to engage in corruption or they would be chased away. The constitution needs to be amended using the thieves that we have today. An IMF bailout package can be implemented in the country only if the relevant laws are formulated in the country. The executive and the legislature must be brought under the law. The privileges given to them through the constitution must be abolished. There is no need for them to enjoy powers that go beyond the state official. All political parties must be audited by the state. This will assist in revealing the corrupt deals that they engage in. We should update the legal system. When that is done, all international organizations will come forward to free us from this. This isn't a problem that can be resolved easily.
The former Auditor General made these remarks during a media briefing with civil activists at the Independence Square in Colombo. The group also engaged in a demonstration.
News First with the people.
More headline-making news follows after this short commercial break. Stay with News First.
Tech Bus, launched to increase the tech know-how of Sri Lankan students, concludes on a successful note. Organised by Slit Institute.
Tech Bus.
Main sponsor.
Slit Knowledge University, challenging convention and redefining education.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ
නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ
අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙවෙයිද දැම්මේ
හදිස්සියට බාලා පයිප්පයක් දැම්මේ නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටක්
මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටක් හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප්පයක්
ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජලනල කාර්මිකයා දැන් ළඟම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න.
Welcome back to the news. For ordinary Sri Lankans, queues are not a strange sight anymore. News First has continued to report on the deaths of people who have collapsed in queues for fuel, cooking gas, kerosene and even milk powder. 2 more people lost their lives in these queues during the last 24 hours. The number of deaths that have occurred in queues now stands at 5.
A 47-year-old father of 2 from Pannala had died in a queue for fuel at a filling station in Dankotua. The man, who is a driver by profession, had fainted in a queue to purchase diesel at around 7 last night. He was pronounced dead upon admission to the hospital.
කියලා දිගට මෙයා පොලිමේ ඉන්නා ඊට ඉස්සරින් ගත්තේදි 4:00මාරයි ගෙදරට මේ විදිහට ඒ වේකේ තමයි අපිට කන් දුන්නේ ආයෙ දරුවෝ දෙන්න ඉගෙන ගන්නවා තාම සස්කල කරනවා ගානිතාන්සේ මම දරුවන්ට ගන්නවා.
The remains of the deceased currently lie at the Maravilla hospital. A tense situation arose at a filling station in Hambantota as the fuel shortage angered farmers. Long queues continue to be seen in several areas at present.
We have to stand in queues to reap our harvest. We don't have fuel for our machines. What is the meaning of this? We have to tend to our fields before the 18th. We will receive water by the 20th. We will have to dig our fields using the 225 parliamentarians. A bottle of pesticides costs 18,000 rupees. A bag of fertilizer costs 42,000 rupees. We haven't gathered here for the fun of it. Well,
මේ මිනිස්සු බලයට පොර කරනවා මිසක් මේ මිනිස්සු ගැන කිසිම සැලකිල්ලක් මොකක්වත් නැහැ. එයාලගේ බලය රැකගන්නේ කොහොමද කියන එක.
People who were queued up at a fuel station in Bibila were turned back as there was no diesel or petrol available at the fuel station.
අපිට ඇවිල්ලා ජීවත් වෙන්නේ මහාමාරුවෙන්. අපට පෝරාරෙන් නැතුණා. නමුත් තියෙන කුඹුරාරිය අපි කපා ගන්න ඕනයි. අපට ගහේ පොල් කිරි දිනවා. මිනිස් ටික අපිට දිනවා. නමුත් කොළඹ මිනිස්සු ජීවත් වෙන්නේ ඒක කර. නමුත් කරාඬු කණ්ඩායමක මහත්තයෝ ගිහිල්ලා අතයිල්ල වීඩියෝ කරලන්නකො හෙට උදේ මංකින් දාලා අවුරුද්දක් කණ්ඩ තිබුණු දේ උන්ට නෑද ආමියලා තියෙන්නේ උන්ට. ඒ මොනේ මේ ආණ්ඩුව නිසා ඡන්දේ දුන්නා උන්ට අපි. උන්ට ඡන්ද දුන්නේ 8 9 ලක්ෂ ඡන්දෙන් නැගිට්ටුවා අපි. අපිට ඇවිල්ලා අපි ජීවත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් නිසා නමුත් අපිලා අසරණව ඉන්නේ මේ රාත්‍රී රාත්‍රී බෝලිමේ අපි.
Long queues for gas were seen in many areas today as well. People organized a protest in the Baddegama town out of frustration for not receiving gas during the last 3 days. The demonstration was held by blocking the Galle-Baddegama main road near the clock tower. The protesters dispersed after the police intervened and assured that gas would be sold tomorrow. The shortage of cooking gas led to tensions in Kantale today. A protest was held demanding for gas opposite the Agrabodhi College in Kantale along the Colombo-Trincomalee main road. The protesters dispersed after the police intervened and assured that gas would be sold today. But a tense situation arose after a lorry carrying gas cylinders proceeded toward Kalla in the area. A tense situation arose at that time. The distribution of gas took place with the intervention of police. Another protest has been organized about half a kilometer from the location demanding for cooking gas. The protesters called off the demonstrations after the police assured that gas would be sold today.
People across the country are experiencing the effects of the economic crisis in the country. The living standards of a low-income earning family have gone from bad to worse.
From the frying pan to the fire, people who had 3 meals a day are now settling for 2. Those who enjoyed 2 meals a day are settling for 1. But what happens to the people who could have only afforded 1 square meal a day? What do they do now? This is a glimpse into these lives. Almost every Sri Lankan is today experiencing the effects of the economic crisis, and the country is just a few days away from the dawn of the Sinhala and Tamil New Year, usually one of the happiest times of the year. Low-income families cannot bear the burden of the sudden increase in the cost of living. Gammadda took the initiative to distribute food provisions amongst as many of these families as is possible. And it was thanks to the kindness and generosity of donors who stepped forward to help that Gammadda was able to help these needy families. Yes, we can't help everyone who needs help, but that's not a reason to do nothing. Gammadda, by the people, for the people.
News First with the people.
More news follows this short commercial break. Stay tuned.
Tech Bus, launched to increase the tech know-how of Sri Lankan students concludes on a successful note. Organised by Slit Institute.
Tech Bus.
Main sponsor.
Slit Knowledge University. Challenging convention and redefining education.
නිවෙස පුරා ගලන මේ සතුට සුරක්ෂිත කරන්නේ එස්ලෝන් ඉන්සයිට්. එස්ලෝන් ජීවයයි ජලයේ ජීවිතේ.
Welcome back to the news. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa met with the chairman of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, former President Maithripala Sirisena today. The meeting was held at the official residence of the former president.
Meanwhile, representatives of the parties that left the government held a discussion with the Sri Lanka Freedom Party today. The meeting was chaired by former President Maithripala Sirisena.
Meanwhile, the 41 parliamentarians who left the government concluded their discussions with the president this evening. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party convened a media briefing this morning and spoke about what will be the focus of the discussions with the president.
We are of the stance that to resolve this issue, we must first establish an interim government council with a new Prime Minister. By doing this, we hope to first normalize the country and take the necessary steps to solve the fuel, gas, food and medicine crisis. We are of a clear stance that the 20th Amendment to the Constitution must be abolished and the 19th Amendment should be brought forward subject to certain amendments. If we abolish the 20th Amendment and pass the 19th, we will receive international support as a government. The main demand of the people is for the Rajapaksa family to step down. That is one main demand voiced by the people everywhere. The government must listen to this main demand of the people and take the necessary steps. We are of the opinion that all of these must take place within the democratic framework of our constitution.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says the government that destroyed the people will definitely be sent home. He made these comments during a demonstration organized by farmers of the Hiyattakandiya.
The Samagi Gobi Balawege had organized a demonstration in the Hiyattakandiya. What has happened to this prosperous country? The leaders of this country are dragging people to the verge of death instead of helping them survive. I don't mean to offend you, but it's sad that the farmers brought this upon themselves due to their choices at the presidential and general elections. I feel empathetic towards everyone. Don't worry, the Rajapaksa government which destroyed the people will definitely be sent home. We should also abolish this executive presidency which gives unlimited powers to the president. We need a mandate to abolish the executive presidency.
In a weather update, strong currents have swept away 2 people, including a child, as heavy rains continue across the country. Many areas have received more than 100 millimeters of rainfall in the last 24 hours. Landslide warnings have been issued to 8 districts as well. The Met Department says more rains are expected due to the atmospheric disturbance around Sri Lanka.
Gates of the Daduroya reservoir was open up to 3 feet due to heavy rains since this morning. 2 sluice gates of the Angamu reservoir was open up to 1 feet each. 6 sluice gates of the Rajangane reservoir were opened last evening. 2 gates were open up to 4 feet while 4 gates were open up to 2 feet each. 2 people have died in the last 24 hours after being swept away by strong currents. 7-year-old Samira Darshana, the only boy in a family of 4 children, was among the casualties. Yesterday, Samira had moved to a new house in Embala with his mother, father and siblings despite the heavy rains last evening. His mother had kept him on one bank of a canal and gone back to fetch his sisters. However, by the time she came back, strong currents had washed Samira away.
ගොඩහට ගෙනල්ලා තියලා අනිත් දෙන්න එකන් ඉන්න ගිහිල්ලා මේ ළමයාට පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්න කියලා ඊට පස්සේ මේ ළමයා ඉන්න නැතුව එකපාරට මේ මෙතනින් ගොඩහට ගිහිල්ලා ඊට පස්සේ අර ඒ ළමයා මේ වතුර දීපාරක් ඇවිල්ලා එකපාරටම ගසාගෙන ගිහිල්ලා.
A 3-wheel driver also lost his life after he was swept away by strong currents in Ingiriya. He met with his tragic fate when returning after a hire.
And that is a wrap of News First Primetime News. For all these stories and more, log on to our website www.newsfirst.lk. Take care and good night.